Hey there, welcome to the On Brand, On Purpose podcast, where identity, influence, and intentions align. Join me for a series of impactful conversations with brand builders, creative collaborators, and women leading with clarity as we discuss personal branding in real life. I am super excited to start this podcast with a very special guest. So let's jump into it. I would love to introduce you all to Jacqueline M. Baker, who is founder of Scarlet and author of 2 great books that I have, and the podcast host of Just Start.
Hello.
Jacqueline, that was a long title. So come on, walk me through all the things.
Was it a long title?
It felt long.
Okay. I mean, because that's the abbreviated title, if we're just being honest here.
Okay, well, help me out, Cha.
Founder of Scarlet, which is important because that is where our relationship starts. I think our business and our friendship started with business. We started with collaborating around the business space, and then we became friends. Scarlet started as an etiquette company 14 years ago, believe it or not, and which means that we have been connected for 14 years. That's the numbers on it. And of course, we'll get into how Scarlet has evolved over the last 14 years, but founder of this company that is focused on modern etiquette and leadership, author of 2 books, Leader by Mistake, and also The Unexpected Leader, which of course is right over my shoulder, and podcast host. I produce a podcast called Just Start, Get Visible, helping people get visible in a way that feels right to them. Of course, there are other titles that I have underneath there, but a lot of the work, most of the work that I care deeply about and I'm committed to falls underneath those few titles.
As you mentioned, we've known each other for about 15 years, actually. And although we're both from Detroit, went to opposing high schools,
Wow. Why is that even necessary?
It's opposing. I didn't say it was a better school, which there is. I just said that it was opposing.
I mean, nobody's even talking about high school.
The defensive things. Okay, nonetheless, it's a Detroit thing. I would love to go back in time. When we met, you were, of course, getting ready to launch Scarlet. You were employed full-time, from my understanding. You also had another venture that you were working on at the time. But if you can share with me, and this will be our first time actually talking about this, but what was going on with Jacqueline during that time? What made you want to get into a new venture?
That's a solid question. I am a starter. So to baseline answer the question why I wanted to get into a new venture, I like starting stuff. I own a couple trademarks called Just Start. Clearly, I produce a podcast called Just Start. I like to start. I like the feeling of starting, which is one of the reasons why it's important for me to have solid professionals on my team who can check my blind spots because I get good feels from literally just starting. But what was going on in that season of my life, which was probably like mid-20s, maybe like early 20s-ish, is I had made a decision, or me and my business partner, the first company, had made a decision that for Ep1, our event production business, that it had ran its course and that I now had some interest in doing something solo, which of course was Scarlet. It was important to me to try to put as many pieces as possible together to make sure that it was launched in a very thoughtful way, which is the reason that Cherice got a call. And I believe that you were referred from a mutual friend at the time. I knew that I just wanted Scarlet to feel different than Ep1, which was the event production business. We did great things with that company. Very proud about what we did. Very proud of, honestly, getting some name recognition and notoriety around what we did there. However, I felt like there had to be a different, maybe better way to go about launching something. Also, what I'll say is when my ex-business partner and I launched that company, we literally just decided one day, we were disgruntled about our jobs. And we were just like, we could do this. We can go launch our own company. And we did. I think we were down at the city county building in Detroit in a matter of days.
Wow.
Starting a company, right? Just Start. It's been in my life for a long time. And while it worked out, we had that business, that partnership for 8 years. I know that if we would have did some things differently, that we would have prospered even more than we did. And so I wanted to go about doing things in a bit of a different way.
Obviously, what I hear, and again, we're having a conversation we never have had. It's you were the first time being a solopreneur, and you identified that a way that things worked, having a co-founder, you wanted some things to be different for your own venture. And I think, to me, that sounds like the start of trying to shape what your brand was going to be, whether that was execution from organization, et cetera. You had a point of view and you were able to operate freely with that in mind.
I think that's fair. What I will say too, to your point that you just raised, is it is a lot different operating in partnership versus operating independently. it does allow you independently to just think different. I mean, things are so much different when you have to pass ideas or run ideas by somebody that you're in a business relationship with versus if it's just like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, this is my decision. And so yeah, I do think that that absolutely was an opportunity for me to think differently about how I was moving.
You've done a lot with Scarlet, as you mentioned. Scarlet still exists, 14 years later in different capacities. You've ventured out into a lot of things. But again, I want to remind the audience that you also had a full-time job. Can you kind of talk about with your day job versus Scarlet, was there a shift in how you showed up?
As you know, and of course, as I know, there are lots of people that are trying to launch things or launching things off the side of their desk. They have a job that they might even love, and they're just like, hey, but there's more in me, or I can make impact in another way. And I went through two shifts or two transitions, if you will. When I was in Detroit and I first launched Scarlet, I had a full-time job. When I moved to the DC area, I ended up in a scenario where I had a full-time job that I loved, by the way, and I was taking Scarlet to another level. And so I've done this twice in pretty major ways. It is a challenge for some people, for many people, to look at themselves as the top line for them and recognize that the job that you have and the things that you're starting are an extension of you versus the mindset of my job is my everything. Some people buy into that. And I guess you probably would right size them on how they're thinking about that.
Yeah.
When people do think that way, it allows them to almost give themselves permission to say, well, it is important for me to have a brand for myself because I am not this company. This company is an extension of me. For me, I have kept things separate. And it hasn't even been intentional that I've kept things separate. It hasn't been like, okay, you're not going to be the company. I've just always thought of myself as not that. It's like you are many things. Like you have many extensions of yourself. And so how you choose to show up is up to you. And those things almost have to fit into who you are. And I've always had that mindset. To be honest with you, I don't know. It could be the fact that I became an entrepreneur so early that it just became ingrained in me. But I do believe that when you operate that way and you embrace that mindset, it makes it easier for you to care a bit more about what your brand says about you because you are responsible for that. Do understand that if you have not had that approach to things, how grasping that is hard because sometimes your identity is so caught up in what your day job is. However, it is a mindset that I would encourage a lot of people to shift on as quickly as possible because companies go away, opportunities at companies go away overnight. And then what? Then you have to quickly figure out who you are. Yeah. And so that's been my experience with that transition and my mindset around it all and how, to be honest with you, that mindset approach has served me well.
Not many people think that way. And it's not just about their career. Yeah. It's also about how they see themselves as a mom, right? And as a wife and, as a daughter or again, a son or a husband, And so oftentimes people have a lot of filters, right? And it just really depends on where they stagger their personal brand within that. I do want to be transparent about some of the challenges you did have, right? You did try to keep things separate. And at some point, things came to a head. So yes, you had the right mindset from a sense of not being tied to a corporation per se, but knowing that you had outlets of other ways that helped build your brand. But when you started to have some rub with your corporation, can you share a little bit? And again, it's less around the output of the work. It's more around your brand and how you showed up. How visible were you on LinkedIn or where was that pivot,
Yeah. And I'll say in the first transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, I believe that I was visible, but not actively visible, meaning that you probably wouldn't see me posting about the events that we did or etiquette as much as I could have, right? So it wasn't a secret, but it's like you had to search a little bit to find out about it. During my second transition, it was pretty clear. It was okay, this is what she's doing. I believe that the reason why I wasn't called to the carpet as hard is because I was in a space that had nothing to do with my corporate space. And I think that is the challenge that a lot of people run into is you may be stepping into a space or wanting to start in a space that is in direct competition or may even look a little sketch that, okay, you're about to be in competition with the organization that technically pays you. And I can see how a company would be like, wait a minute, what we got going on here? My privilege in my situation was that I was not in a competing category. However, there were questions. there were questions around, hey, we see that you got this other company going on here. Tell us about it. And I think what often happens in situations like that is that people freeze up and either don't want to fully say this is what's going on, or completely don't say what's happening with it at all. And almost because they feel like somebody's going to tell them no. When I was just like, look, when I had this company before I started here, and I was just flat out honest about it from the beginning. And I know that for some people that might feel like, oh my God, like what's going to happen here? People are going to ask questions, and they might. I think that some companies feel like they have the right, or they do have the right to ask, just based on the commitment that you have with the company. But I told the truth. I was just like, this is what it is. And I felt confident that it was going to be fine because I truly was not in a competing category at all. Did I have scenarios where when I launched my first book, where I was popping up in conferences and spaces where senior leadership of this organization was popping up at conferences? Yeah, that happened a couple of times. And they're like, wait a minute, are you here as a representative of the company? What are you doing here? Because, there's some high visibility spaces that I was in. I was like, no, I'm here on my vacation time, on my own dime, right? And just because I chose to, and I do highly encourage other people to operate above board and in a way where it can check the ethics box, I may have had this little tingling in my stomach of like, okay, I'm being asked some questions, but I could equally confidently meet that tingle with like, but I ain't doing nothing wrong. Like I am here on my own dime, on my own time, and I'm good. I do feel like more and more as people are starting to embrace the idea of, I have a job, and maybe even I like my job. However, I can be more than one thing. There are going to be more and more situations where you have to, I don't even want to say justify. You're going to be asked questions about what is this and how is it showing up? And you got to make the decision. What is your answer going to be versus saying, I'm just not going to do it at all. And so that was my experience from the transition and even being in spaces that I got questions about.
It sounds like your employer, your managers, et cetera, had a taste of who your brand was. So although they may have had questions, it kind of felt in line with Jacqueline. And that's where I think the more that we can show up authentically in our 9-to-5s or our jobs, the less it's going to seem like a complete like disruption or, like who the heck is that?
Yeah.
And I often find that, because as I've done brand consulting, I find that sometimes people do get into arenas that are quite different, but also even how they show up is quite different. And then that signals to your organization of, whoa.
Yeah. Because there's a shift. Maybe they feel like, oh, they're changing. Cherice, I'll say to that end or to that point as well, I firmly believe that my elevation at my last corporate role was because of what my brand was. Because my job was very visible. And to be very clear, and I say this publicly and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, like I loved my job. I was, one of those people that really enjoyed what I did in my last corporate role. I was just clear that it's not what I was supposed to be doing with my life long term, like from a legacy building standpoint. However, I deeply enjoy my job. But I know for sure that the fact that I could be looked up on LinkedIn at the time, and it was clear that, oh, Jacqueline has stage presence, and she knows that there are certain ways that she can show up that this skill set is actually going to deeply benefit our department. And it did, because my job was so about being on stages, accepting the awards, like doing the things, in addition to the things that, were hard, not glitzy things.
Right.
That I do believe that the brand that I had built, the brand that we had built together, it benefited me from a corporate standpoint.
And that's what I observe from the sidelines, right? I think collective, and I would say especially women, we get this sense of fear. And I still have bits of it, right? Where it's like, if I be my authentic self, what does that mean? Am I going to lose? Am I going to lose? We're often thinking of the fear of what could happen versus the what if things actually sync up even better,
Yeah.
And this is something I think corporations, by the way, have to reconcile. And specifically managers, right? If I want my team to show up authentic, what would that mean? And there may be some negatives to that, but I would argue that it will likely lead to a lot more positives in how your brand, your corporation is shown, but also the output of the work. And then to your point, what I witnessed is you lended credibility, because really what I saw, and most people don't think about it this way, but from personal branding, it's almost like you're sharing a brand equity.
It's true.
Your equity as Jacqueline M. Baker lended to your corporation at the time. and vice versa. You working for that corporation lend it to your equity. And that is the beauty of actual partnership, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that we are going to move to a stage where people are going to start looking at things as partnership versus employer employee. What is the exchange of my time and my skill set? And the beauty is when we can exchange branding, when I have this authentic person operating in their gifts, it's going to produce great work.
Yeah.
Then, that exchange is hopefully met financially as well. And then that is how I think corporations soar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, it's already happening, and like it's happening at very high levels, from a celebrity standpoint, right? Like, I mean, all these celebrities that are becoming chief creative officer or whatever, right? Of course, they ain't coming into the job every single day, but it's a similar concept. Like it is brand lift, or brand partnership, however you want to describe it from a brand expert standpoint. But it's happening. Like, you see the Tabitha Browns, you see the Keke Palmers, like assuming these roles or having these titles that typically celebrities don't have in that way. And so it feels like the same type of thing going on. The question, and I'm sure you'll have your pulse on this, is like, when does that trickle down out of celebrity land, right? Average Joe, like average Joanne, who has some significant brand value or has a significant personal brand, that brand equity, if you will, that they bring to the organization then benefits from.
Yeah, I mean, that would take us down another podcast. But I think the short answer is when organizations start to truly honor authenticity in their employees, I think it will unlock so much more, because we often think a celebrity, to your point, is going to do the trick, not recognizing that the consumers are a lot more savvy and smarter and sharper, and they value people from their tribe, their hood, who had an opportunity to accelerate, right? Or to get into those rooms. And so I do think it is interesting to unpack at some point. The Jacqueline M. Northrup to Jacqueline M. Baker. We didn't go into that one.
We did not go into that.
But let's just have a conversation for the world to see. I mean, you're established.
Yeah.
Your spouse is established. Obviously you dated and were together for quite some time before you made that leap for marriage, but we specifically talked about the business side. And walk me through what you were thinking at the time.
This is such an interesting conversation. I don't say it just to be somebody who says this is such an interesting conversation. Like, it legit is like interesting, because there was a season in the maybe like, because I got married when I was 32, so probably late 20s, where I was thinking about the name scenario and what am I going to do? My maiden name is Jacqueline M. Northrup. I happen to deeply enjoy my maiden name because, number one, you don't just run across a bunch of other Northrups running around out here. Northrop Grumman, of course, is a thing. I think it's a military contractor equipment type company. And I have a very small family on my mother's side. Like, literally, there are just a few of us left, very few of us. And so it felt like, okay, is this an opportunity to just continue to allow the name to live on? And I definitely, in my mind, experimented with Jacqueline M. Northrup Baker. And at that season, at that point in time, like literally as I glance over here to the left on my wall, I have a series of awards that are on the wall. And of the awards that I have now, I'll probably say like 40% of them have Northrup on them, right? They were things that I had achieved pre-marriage. What I will say is my decision to change my name was a really important conversation with my husband. That's flat out what it was. And our decision in moving forward with what felt like the bow on top of our union and me changing my name. Did I have angst? Like, was I upset about it? No. But I did have some pause, right? About, oh my gosh, like I've accomplished all these things, and now will people be able to find them or whatever, like was going on in my mind at the time. And I don't know if I feel like I was overthinking it at that point. And I certainly don't want anybody listening to this to think, if you're weighing this, oh my God, am I overthinking this? Because I got married, I would say early-ish in my life. If I look back, it feels early. And I've accomplished a great deal of things since that time. It's been, 12, I don't know, it's been a long time since then, 13 years. For me, I don't have any regrets with changing my name whatsoever, but it really was a lot of thought that I had in my mind around, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? And I ended up landing on the change. But I do think that I can see how, especially if you marry later in life, how it becomes much more of a thing of like, wait a minute, like, what does this mean for the legacy I've built and the name? And it's funny, I just ran across this social post just yesterday, Cherice, and it was a little bit of a joke, but I think the woman was serious. She was like, you can date me all day long, but my name's not changing. Like, you can if you can date me all day long and ask to marry me, and cool, I'm gonna agree, but my name's not changing. And so clearly there's a great deal of people out here, and I get it, that are just like, look, I'm standing on whatever my name is because of the accolades that come along with it. But I definitely gave some serious thought to it and had some serious conversations with my husband about it.
Certainly, I changed my name once I got married as well, but I was also very intentional and more than I even realized around keeping a lot of my email handles, social accounts. None of them actually had even my maiden name.
Yeah.
It was all Cherice Jenelle. And so I maintained a lot of things once I got married. The reason why I brought it up is because oftentimes people look at some tactical decisions like that and, have questions, right? And they're like, oh, listen to this podcast. What should I do? Should I change my last name or not? I think what's most important is your core values, which we'll get into a lot deeper, but is that the same? Because regardless of what you call yourself, are you showing up the same? And there are people who may choose to marry and show up different. That's their prerogative. But I think that is usually the core question I ask when it comes to personal branding is, who are you and how do you show up? Because yes, people get married and they change their last name. Are you fundamentally changing who you are in the storyline of who you are? Because if you're not, people will connect the dots at some point. And I think what you did and what I also did was I used Cherice J. I used my middle name. You used Jacqueline M. And that connector right there helps solve a lot. But again, I do remember in building your logo, us, talking through that.
We did. We did. We talked about it. I mean, what's crazy is in reflection, we talked about that a lot. And there's a letter on the wall from an admiral. I did some work with the Navy, and that letter has Jacqueline M. Northrop Baker, because there was this transition that I did have where I was using both, knowing that it was going to be Baker. But for me, I needed to bridge that gap for myself. And I'm not mad that I did it at all. Like me and my husband, we knew what it was, but it did help me in my mind, right? Get ready. Cause it's almost like it's a shift. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, new name. And when you have been operating one way from a business standpoint, just like change it might be a problem, either emotionally or physically or whatever it is. And so there are a couple things that are official documents that still have Jacqueline M. Northrop Baker on them because it was me in the transition.
Yeah. Look, to your point, there's no right or wrong. It's, whatever bridge makes sense for you, just have a strategy and have some steps. So the irony of me just starting this podcast, which I didn't want to call it a podcast, a series of
it's conversation in the living room,
a series of intellectual conversations amongst girlfriends. There is irony in you being my first guest, and a lot of gratitude also with that, because as much as I have, supported you and your businesses, you've also been a great person, guidance counselor, all those things, etiquette coach as well, to, ensure that you were pouring into me as well. So I appreciate that. So we talked a little bit about the founder of Scarlet. Tell me a little bit more about what you do. Who are your clients? Who do you service?
We serve corporations that are committed to helping leaders become better leaders. We serve youth organizations that are committed to helping our little leaders, so our youth and our teen, get a head start, a competitive advantage, make sure that they get confidence in the spaces that they're in to ultimately become better leaders. And we serve individuals who are very interested in getting visible in a way that feels right to them.
What is your particular deliverable, if you will? Like, what are you doing to transform, I'm assuming, the person from point A to point B?
A couple things. Hugely, it is understanding where they're at. And I'll speak for the adults for just a second. It is understanding where they're at, either from a leadership standpoint or a visibility standpoint, and making a plan on where it is that they want to be. That also means it could mean getting information, data about how they are showing up. So we do a significant number of 360 assessments, because somebody could think, I'm showing up as a great leader. And it's like, wait a minute, you need to work on X, Y, Z. The deliverable looks a little bit different depending on who you are, but it is always in the vein of helping leaders become better leaders.
From working with you, I can share with the audience that Jacqueline believes everyone's a leader.
I do.
Right.
I do. And I mean, to clarify that, because I know some people are like, wait a minute, we think about leadership really in 4 quadrants at Scarlet. And this is also represented in my second book, The Unexpected Leader: self-leadership, leaders of others, leaders of communities, leaders of movements. We don't live in the world of you should only see yourself as a leader based on a particular role, position, status, or title. And I really do believe, especially in connecting the dots in this conversation, that it ultimately does go back to how you see yourself and how you're showing up. Even as we think about the personal branding space, right? You could literally be a self-leader, individual contributor, but you're like, well, you know what, how I show up is saying what about me overall. And so I truly do believe that leadership exists in all these different pockets of the world that have nothing to do with whatever your role, position, status, or title is. And so, yes, I completely stand by and double down on that.
I was at a conference this past weekend, which Oprah was a keynote speaker. She made a comment to say, I'm a good leader, but I'm not a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we can unpack a lot of that through your books, but I think we're making that delineation that anyone can be a leader. Some people translate that to management of others, which doesn't always have to be true. Similarly, with personal branding, people often say to me, well, I don't have a personal brand. And I'm like, oh, you do.
You do.
You do.
Is it what you want it to be, though, is the question.
You do. You were born with one. And you've made choices throughout your life to build that. The question is, to your point, is it what you want? Is it attracting what you need? And so, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you outside of just starting and you being the godmother of just starting.
I accept it.
Tombstone. How important is personal branding when you encounter a client?
Especially in our visibility work. So specifically, if someone comes to us and says, hey, I am good at X. I've been good at my job and I put my head down, I do the work, but I understand that I have more to give, more to share. They're not necessarily somebody that is always like, I'm trying to leave this job. They just may be like, in the role or capacity that I'm in right now, there's got to be more, right? I got to get more visible. And they usually don't use the words visible. They'll say, there's just more in me, and I'm not sure exactly what that is. And quickly we'll ask them, or I actually will just quickly go and search around and see, like, what is the world saying about them? And that could be in a lot of spaces. It could be LinkedIn. It could be Instagram. It can be any of the space. It could be me, if I know them, asking around about, like, how are they showing up? And we do several exercises to get to the root of, okay, what truly is your expertise? What is it that you want to be known for from an intellectual standpoint, and finding out, are they actually communicating those things that they say they want to be known for? And more often than not, they're usually not, right? Mm-hmm. When we say get visible in the Just Start / Scarlet world, it is truly getting visible in a way that feels right to you. Most people, when they hear get visible, they're like, oh, I don't want to be on stages, or I don't want to be doing keynotes. And that doesn't have to be. It literally could be you raising your hand in your workplace saying, hey, I want more opportunities, or I want to be thought of, or whatever. Could it mean podcasts? Could it mean stage presence? Sure, it could, but it doesn't need to be those things. However, if somebody is already known for the things, if they've already gone down the path of identifying or taking serious what their personal brand says, it makes this visibility part a whole lot easier, right? Because then it could turn into, you are clear about the things that you want to speak about. However, how are you delivering that? Like, is the way that you're showing up riddled with filler words? Are you actually making an ask of people connecting with you after the chat? Like, all these other things that could and should happen that allow people to get more visible, those things become a lot easier if they come to me and say, hey, I know that I am XYZ. Yeah. I know that, or I already believe that I should be serious about my brand, and I'm just not. I'm like, okay, you already believe it. Like, we don't even have to go down the convincing journey here. Let's just execute. And so it is a lot easier, man. And I get a mix of people who have already been convinced of it, and some people that are just like, me? Like, I have stuff to say, or people think that, people would be interested in what I say. And it's like, well, this company is paying you a couple $100,000 for your expertise. So I'm pretty sure some other people probably would be interested in what you have to say too, right? And so I think when you embrace it in that way, it's like, oh yeah, like, this company's endorsed me and is spending a lot of money on me. I probably got some stuff to say that the public would agree on as well.
Yeah.
So it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I think about, oftentimes, again, in marketing world, which I think personal branding and everything is
Mhm.
sort of adjacent, right? But it's people want that ROI, right? They want that return on investment of hiring someone like you. And they don't realize that your output is only as good as your input.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so, not that you couldn't help refine, and it sounds like with a lot of
Right.
clients that you massage and you refine and you try to
Mhm.
get the best output you can. But my God, imagine again, you have that client who's like, I am clear, I'm even 80% there.
Right.
Right. And then the ROI, the return on investment of hiring you to do your best work and the impact, the ease of the impact or how quick you can impact is greater,
Yeah. Oh,
I find
completely.
that when I've done marketing consulting or even working with big brands, right? It's so many hurdles mentally you got to go through that you look up and it takes you 3 years to even operate on what that consultant told you to do because you're
Yeah.
just mentally just working through it. And so I think it's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit with you as
Yeah.
well. It's like, you can massage it, but man, if you had this,
It would make it easier.
yeah.
It's also, there are things that I won't do and am not interested in doing. I'm not interested in telling you what your brand guideline looks like. I'm not, it's not my wheelhouse. It is not something that I'm interested in going into. I am not a branding expert at all. And when you have those things knocked out and you've done the exercises with you or another marketing professional, it's like, okay, cool. Like we have the baseline stuff done. Let's get to work. Like, let's really talk about the things that you could be saying a bit differently, the way that you are executing on stage, the limiting beliefs that you do have, even in the workplace, when you're like, hey, should I raise my hand? Should I not? Like, we can knock out that stuff. We don't have to, get into those other things. And so it absolutely does help when you've gone down that path.
We got to remember, like people like you get into entrepreneurship and you get into purpose-driven work because of the purpose of doing the work. And when we stretch ourselves, and I'm so glad that you said, "Hey, this is what I'm not," because a lot of people, and I've been one of those who inherit more that is
Mm-hmm.
out of scope of what we truly are passionate about. And then what
Yeah.
happens is we're burnt out doing the things that aren't even the purpose-driven component of it. And so for you to say, "Hey," perhaps you meet a client and you're like, you know what? I would love to refer you to this person to help sharpen some things, and then let's come
Yeah.
back, or maybe in tandem. But that enables you to work in your true gift and not feel like you have to now add on the hat of a marketing, consultant. And the same thing for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful to work in many different capacities of marketing, corporate marketing, but to be at a stage to say, hey, I really excel
Mm-hmm.
this piece of it. And so when people come to me and say, hey, I know you do this and that, and you've done this, to say, well, today, this is my lane, but we will kindly refer you to someone who can build out your social media strategy. But that's not something I'm touching. It's not that I'm incapable.
Right, right. I'm not operating at my best if I have to do that for you. I feel like you get there. I do understand that, especially earlier in an entrepreneurial career, you may have this, you may have this feeling of, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. I gotta do this and I gotta do that. And over time, I think you get this confidence or realization, or you get this burnout that you're just like, yeah, I don't really have to do all that. But I almost think like for some people, they have to like go through the mud in order to understand like you don't really have to do that. And so hopefully there's a significant number of people that are listening to this. There is a world where I can stay in my lane and zone of genius, and people will still pay me for that, look to me for that, versus trying to be a Jacqueline, Jack, whatever of all trades. Like there is true value to saying no to the things that you are not excellent at or the things that you do not do well.
So isn't Jacqueline of all trades your social handle?
No, but it should be. I just made that up. I'm about to go.
For the audience, it's magical jacks,
It is
I
Magical
mean,
Jacks on the IG. But honestly, that was good. That was in the moment.
no, because you're not Jacqueline of all trades. Um, I think just to round out what we were just talking about, building your personal brand, and similarly in a corporate brand or in a new startup, right? You're going to clarify what you are and what you
Hmm.
aren't. And there's literally one pagers out there that we would put, my brand is this, and it's
Yes.
not this. And I want more people when they think about their personal brand, what are you and what aren't you?
Hmm.
And that would allow you to have discernment as opportunities come up right? You and I've talked about this around speaking engagements that come
Hmm.
up, and you being able to say, hey, not every opportunity is created equal here.
Right.
We talked about pricing,
Hmm.
so I think the first step is driving that clarity on who you are, but in the same token, clarity on what you're not. And the more that I became comfortable saying no or saying, hey, I'm not this, oh man, it actually is a level of freedom. So, Jacqueline, we've said a lot in
Hmm.
this chat, this conversations amongst intellectuals. I speak in threes. You know this.
I don't know.
I always ask you. You got three things. Boom, 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 boom. All right, so boom, boom, boom. What is Jacqueline's brand?
Okay, this is a good one. Jacqueline's brand is action, it's accountability, and it's fun.
You need to come up with another A, because you were. Oh man, that could have
I
been
know, I
something.
know, I know.
God dang.
But fun is cool too.
Fun is
So
cool.
action, accountability, and another A word for F is this is the Cherice help look.
This is where ChatGPT is gonna help us out.
Action, accountability, and
No,
some
no,
and fun.
keep your fine.
I
But
mean, it is.
I think
It's
you can
fun.
refine that as I consult with you on this podcast. That alliteration. But no, I think it's important. One, I agree, right? Action, accountability, and fun. That is exactly who you are. That's who you've been. And I think through our a consulting relationship. As we've talked about your social media presence and that tension of being an etiquette coach, but
Mhm.
having fun, right? You got to work through all of that, right? But I'm so glad that you've landed in a space where you can be authentically yourself. Action, accountability, authenticity.
Maybe. I think I mean I like the fun. Like I just live your life.
Mm.
Sometimes there will be time for you to connect a hashtag to the work that you do, but by literally just like living and breathing and operating the way you operate, it will connect to the people that you most want to do business with, i.e., connect with, whatever. And it feels hard to believe, to be honest with you, until you've been in a space for 14 years and you truly can teach etiquette at tons of different levels, from conservative spaces to like the super social spaces, and you can be yourself, right? Like legit. And I think I'm grateful for growing into being completely comfortable and like kicking it in the streets and the suites, being comfortable with being a leadership person that's going to teach you how to be the best possible leader you can be, and an etiquette professional, and throw a mean dinner party, and being okay with all that, and still get calls from people that are like, can you do that some more?
I can't move on. I'm sorry.
Let me tell you something. I
Kicking it
believe in
from
that.
the streets to the suites is wild.
If I can't kick it in the streets respectively and the suites, like, what am I doing? What am I?
Wow, that's powerful. That's very powerful.
I don't know if it's really powerful. It sounds.
No, I resonate. I resonate.
Yeah,
You
listen,
know,
I wasn't gonna put you out there. I was about to say, Sharice, you've been
back
with
it.
me, and we've been together.
Put that on my tombstone. Wow, wow. How much of your business is through word of mouth
Mm,
and your personal brand essentially speaking for you when you're not in the room versus you pushing your brand on someone else?
listen, okay.
Okay. How much are you actually marketing yourself versus attracting?
I believe that a significant amount of the business that we do is from attraction versus marketing. And I will be honest in saying that I have been actively pursuing, not necessarily it not being that way, but us going after it more versus just letting it land. I mean, we have truly benefited from a significant amount of repeat business and referrals over the last decade plus, and I'm very grateful for it. However, with the big goals that we have on the table and the big scale that I have in mind, it requires more, right? It just requires more eyes on our work and more connections, et cetera. So we've invested over the years in a number of different marketing related things, tools, people, in order to ensure that we're showing up in places where our people are, or the people that we want to connect with are. However, I still very much believe that particularly my brand has truly opened the doors for Scarlet and the things that I do, which I've had a personal internal rift with that. I mean, we've talked about this ad
Mm-hmm.
nauseum, in that I have attempted, right, to draw a line in between my personal brand and the business. I actually don't think that I've been very successful at it. And I think some people are just like, but why kind of thing? Like, why would you do that? I've always wanted Scarlet's merits and Scarlet's capabilities to stand on its own, independent of my personal brand, but they're so connected and so intertwined that I actually don't think that the timing in which I was trying to do it actually made sense. I really don't. Yeah, it seems like I'm about to get a verbal thrashing here on this
You are,
with
Lord.
girlfriends, but that's just how I felt. Like, and you know that's not a secret. That's totally how I felt over the years.
Yeah, and I will say this to you again. Again. About that time annually, I'll say this to you one more
No,
again, that Scarlett's merits are you.
even though we have other people that do work for the company, like
And I
it's
think
not just
that
me.
is the layer, obviously, that many corporations have to work through, or startups or businesses, right? Oh, I can go deep on this, but we just can't discount, to your point, your personal brand and your success and how that uplifts Scarlett. And the reality is your employees, people that work for you, need your brand as well. That's where the reconciliation is. At the end of the day, I want to have that badge of I work for a great employer. And if my employer, in particular the people, are out there doing some great badass things, I want to be associated with that. You see that person, you see that
Yeah.
VP, you see that president, they out here, I love that. I want to be inspired. And so, like, don't discount. And I know we're not going to get into an actual consulting
Yeah.
contract right now, but just don't discount that. And I think it's important to recognize, as we wrap this up, is that despite Jacqueline have a really powerful brand, playing in a lot of different ventures, you still wrestle with questions. And personal branding is not a static thing. It evolves. I mean, you were in your 20s. You're not in your 20s anymore.
No, I'm totally like, I'm one of those people who are just like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not trying to
Well,
be
I've
20
been telling more
anymore.
people lately that black don't crack, and they're like, "We know you told us already." Come on, again. But no, I think personal branding is an evolution, which is why I'm excited to join the conversation officially. Although, even as I was reflecting on our time working alongside each other, and you sent me a photo,
No, yes, yes.
can
So
you
random. So random.
can you explain what the photo was?
Well, first of all, I think that it's worth us going down for real memory lane.
That down.
Anyway, I mean, Cherice has truly been, you have truly been, we've been in partnership at a lot of important junctures. Starting Scarlet, like I have footage and image, like really special images, even on Facebook page, Scarlet's Facebook page, of you facilitating a listening session with like some really key leaders in Detroit at the Weston Book Cadillac. So there at the start of that, when I launched my first book, it was a self-published. I put together a team. Cherice was on marketing for that. I can't, like, literally so many times that I've pulled and been like, hey, Cherice, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Jacqueline Brand. Just so many. And so because of our work together, when it was time for me to even tap her for other opportunities that we had been contracted for as a company, it made it a bit easier. And so really what happened at the beginning of the Scarlet launch was our huge intent was to teach etiquette to teen girls. Like that's what we were trying to, that was our commitment. And then like 6-7 months into doing the work, the Detroit Lions called and asked if we can teach etiquette to their rookie players. And so we ended up on this journey of like 6 years teaching etiquette to the rookies, which most people are like, what? Like, what were you even doing? And so one etiquette sector that we go deep on is business etiquette and making sure that the players understand that you are not just a football player. The average football career is 3.5 years, right? And then what? And so it was important for me to bring in these different pockets, whether it's grooming or dining or marketing, for them to understand like their opportunity. And so one of the years I said, hey, Cherice, can you come in and teach the branding, personal branding component for the Detroit? And so we still have some like great pictures from that.
When I tell people that, personal branding, I want to kind of lean in a little bit more because, again, the impetus for me even going down this route of coaching is reflection, quite frankly. When people always ask me, well, how do you get all that stuff done? Like, I don't know. But really to do the soul searching and obviously going through a transitionary period in my life, recognizing that, I built my personal brand, right? So to your point, as much as I was building other people's brands and corporations' brands, I was also building my brand too, right? And so when I tell people I'm doing personal branding coaching and workshops, they're like, duh, you've been doing that, right? And so when I got that photo from you, I was like, wait, I was doing personal branding for the Detroit Lions
Seriously.
11 years ago.
11 years ago. Been in
And
the
that
game for a while.
literally, I go back into standing in front of that group, right, the rookies, and helping them understand the new arena that they were now playing in, and using examples of previous athletes and how their personal brands have either helped and hurt them. And again, this is before all the conversations around, the current way of the world, right, where you can actually, make monetary gains from your personal brand. And so, it is a full circle moment for me to finally own up to what I've been doing. And again, I can unpack that another day. But again, thank you for those opportunities, because you saw a personal brand in me. Dare I ask you what my personal brand is?
Is that a question, or
It's a question.
is that a dare?
I don't know if I want to know the
I'm going to
answer.
answer it. I'll say two. In addition to me answering that question, and bridging a gap from what you just said about going back and sort of reminding yourself that I've been doing this, I do think that piece in itself is the missing piece that a lot of people have before they really want to give themselves permission to dive deep on what their personal brand is and even get visible. They start to question, like, what have I done, or where have I been, or who's going to listen to me? And once you ask the right questions, because I do it all the time, they realize, like, that's right, I did do this and that and that. And I could probably send you 20 other pictures that I have from important things that we've done over the past 10 years, where you would be like, that's right, I did do that. And that's right, I did. And so I would challenge everybody who's listening, like, you have a substantial amount of experience that's the proof point that you need to get serious about the brand that you could be, the brand that you truly should be and could be making impact around, to get visible in a way that feels right for you. And so I just wanted to bridge that gap, because I think a lot of times people listen to these podcasts, people that have these platforms or create these platforms are just like, oh, that's for them, right? But like, that's not for me, because it's just not for me. But it actually is for you if you give yourself permission to do so.
Yeah.
So what's Cherice's brand?
What is Cherice's brand in 3 words?
3 words. My perspective of Cherice's brand is that it is clean, and I'll come back to why I say that. It's clean, it's still edgy, and it's substantive. It's clean, edgy, substantive. I say clean because, like, literally, I think it's reflected in her background right now. Like, this pretty background that she has right here, it's not just for this conversation. Like, I've been to her house before. Things have this crispness to them. I think your website is a reflection of that. I think just the places that you show up, even how you dress, it's clean. I think if a stylist were to assess you, they would be like, okay, one of her styles, style factor is clean, but it's also edgy, right? Like, you could have a simple background there, but you've chosen like this sort of kind of elaborate background. And I think even if you look in terms of how you've progressed as a leader, as a professional, as, an entrepreneur / consultant, you're going to throw a little edge on it. Like, it's going to be professional, but it's not going to be boring. It's going to be like, okay, all right. But still, like, that's still professional and that's still above board. So it's clean, it's edgy, and it's substantive. Like, you and I have both talked about this. One of the things that we've observed in the personal branding world a lot of times is, and in a lot of worlds, if we go outside of personal branding, is that stuff can be real fluffy on the surface, right? It can be real pretty. You can get the colors, you can get the right fonts and all that stuff. And then what, right? And then what underneath? And so I think substantive, almost to like a, for real, Cherice, like, I really got to think about that. Like, we've gone through many consulting projects, conversations where I just want to be like, Cherice, okay, like, we done, right? You're like, well, could you think about, and I'd be like, girl, I'm the person that wants to make a decision and move on. However, I know enough about myself that I am wired to make the decision and move on. But the people around me have permission to say, I know you want to move on, but can we think about X? And so my substantiveness is sort of rooted in the permission that I've given you, and you've accepted to challenge me on stuff. When I just want to be like, yo, that's it. Like, can we wrap it up? And you might be like, yeah, but like, just consider this.
like this conversation. But I mean, can we go?
What?
Well, no, I appreciate that. I don't know if I've ever called myself clean because you got a little bit of like the slang clean in there. Let me be clear, I am clean.
I'm just saying, do you smell bad? Is there something you're trying to tell the people? What do you mean? Oh, you mean like fresh? Like I'm clean. Like
What's the song that's clean?
ain't nobody
I'm
that
fresh.
is me.
I'm clean.
That's not at all what I was talking about. I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about millennial definite. That's not. You know, I was talking about clean,
Well,
like
I
clean
appreciate
life.
that. I appreciate being clean.
Yeah. I appreciate you being clean. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm clean. But I get your point. And I think the broader point and what I try to coach folks on, I've coached you, your personal brand perception is reality, right? And so as you've talked about, even with your clients, you have audited them. You've audited them.
Yes.
Your clients, you have done a little bit of research. You Googled them. You tried to understand what existed, right? You tried to get a clear understanding of what, point A is. And that is something that I coach people on as well. Google yourself. In fact, put a Google tracker on your name.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you get notified when anything is published about you. And, when I have people do that through the workshop, they are like, oh, Lord. And, I told my team actually to Google me. It wasn't that way. We were doing a personal branding workshop.
Okay.
And I was like, I mean, y'all can Google me if you want to. Google me.
We will. We will.
What you see? Dang, you here? You got this award? You in this?
Hey.
And this is another woman with your name. I know.
Yeah. It's
That's
another
why
one
I have
with my
Cherice
name.
J. Williams.
The J. It's the J differentiator. There's a woman that has my name that writes erotic novels.
Cool.
Yeah. My gosh. Does this conversation need to be over?
Okay. Well, thank you, Jacqueline M. Baker, for all that you do for the community, for the kids, because you still work on kids stuff.
Yes. What?
Can
Body
you
roll?
talk a little bit about
Were you
what you
frowning
do
at your
for?
my body roll? See, fun.
So, Jacqueline, let's talk about body roll. Sorry, we just gonna keep going. This is the last thing. Why do you body roll so much?
I don't body roll so much. I body
You
roll
hashtag body roll.
because it's fun. I mean, come on. Can you actually do a body roll without smiling? It's fun. And I feel like it's really like it might sound ridiculous, but I don't really care. It's so grounding and like if I have a win, it's like let me stop and body roll. Like let me not brush past this win. Like yes, contract signed. Yes, I sold a manor box. Yeah, like and then I might get right back to the business, whatever it is, but just for a minute. Or you can do a deeper body roll if it's like,
Okay, we can. What was most important about Jacqueline's body roll is, at a time when she was coaching on etiquette, right? A
I
topic
don't know,
that many deem serious, right? And I mean, I would show up like, make sure
all things are together.
I talk to Jacqueline the right way. I did. We could
You
talk
did.
about this later. But anyways,
You can have fun.
you can have fun being an etiquette coach. You can be a leader and have fun.
You can be a leader and have fun.
You can be a leader and body roll.
You can build your personal brand and still have fun. Maybe that's why people are afraid. They think it is like, oh no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Brand.
But from the streets to the suites.
Listen, I need to go buy that domain. You know, I still be buying up.
One step ahead of you. I've already bought the URL.
Hey Siri, could you please?
But thank you, Jacqueline and Baker. Until we meet again.
Yeah, absolutely.